All right, everyone present, we'll get underway. Welcome everybody to the City Lifestyle Committee. I declare this meeting open at 11:29am and I'd like to advise meeting attendees that this meeting is being audio recorded. In response to the public health emergency involving COVID-19 coronavirus, this meeting will be physically closed to the public. I'd like to begin today's session by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we're gathered and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Councillors, do we have any councillors reporting leaves of absence today? With no leaves of absence, we'll move forward. Before we get into the reports, I'd just like to take a brief moment to thank the City Lifestyle Deputy Chairs, Councillor Russell and Councillor Hall, whose support have been invaluable over the last couple of weeks, and I'm very excited to have them as part of the City Lifestyles team. To keep the committee running efficiently and out of respect for our managers and directors, we will be presenting reports somewhat out of order. So councillors will be reporting from 5.1, followed by 4.1, and then finally 6.1. I'll now refer to item 5.1, Logan Animal Ambulance Sponsorship Agreement. Can the Health, Environment and Waste Manager, Mr Michael Asnakar, please enter the discussions? Councillors, before we open for discussions to this item, does anyone have any conflicts of interest that they wish to declare? There being no conflicts of interest, I'll now ask Mr Asnakar to present his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Since 2013, Council has sponsored the RSPCA to provide a dedicated animal ambulance for the city. This has proven to be an important and well-regarded service for the city, with the number of rescues steadily growing since 2013 to just over 3,000 rescues last financial year. Council's current 5-year sponsorship arrangement expires on the 30th of June this year, and this report is presenting a further sponsorship agreement, but for a period of 12 months. The reason for a 12-month term being proposed is that the RSPCA has indicated that it will be seeking an increase in the sponsorship amount from the 1st of July 2021 to cover its increasing operational costs and to possibly replace the current ambulance vehicle. This information will be sought from the RSPCA over the next few months and presented to Council for consideration as part of its 2021-22 budget discussions. But in the meantime, a 12-month sponsorship extension will allow for this important service to continue in the city.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone want to ask any questions of the manager? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through the Chair. The Logan Animal Ambulance actually came about from the community. It was an idea conceptualised from the community. It is an absolutely invaluable arrangement that we have, and it shows our commitment to our wildlife. I'm actually happy to move the item, and I don't know if anyone else has got anything else, but I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do I have someone to second the report? Thank you, Councillor Hall. And I concur. It's an amazing program. Very proud to be involved. All those in favour, raise your hand. And that's unanimously supported. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 4.1. I'll now refer to item 4.1. Can the Community Service Manager, Mr Nick Maguire, please enter the discussions with regard to the future direction of the Community Hub at 22 Wilbur Street, Logan Central? Before we open the discussions on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest that they wish to declare?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bradley, please proceed.
I've actually got it listed as 7.1. Is that correct? Am I right in...
I believe that's the confidential component of the report.
So I have sent through I, Lisa Bradley, declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 7.1, which is a confidential component of the City Lifestyles Committee, due to the following reason. During the recent local government election campaign, I was lobbied by Desley Scott in relation to one of the properties listed in the report. The name of the person is Desley Scott, and the relationship of the person is Desley Scott was the former state member for Woodridge. And the nature of the interest in the matter was she was representing on behalf of a non-government organisation. I have determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that it will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest. I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole council's area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Just a reminder, councillors, that the detail with which Councillor Bradley is referring to is in confidential, so if you do have any questions, just be mindful of that. Councillor Bradley has declared a conflict of interest. She's indicated that she proposes to stay and participate in the meeting. In accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, councillors, you must now decide if Councillor Bradley has a perceived or a real conflict of interest and provide a reason for your decision, and also determine if she's free to participate in the meeting while the matter is discussed, including by voting on the matter, or whether she should leave the meeting. Firstly, we'll vote on a motion that Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest. Is there a mover for the motion, please? That motion is lost. We'll now vote on the motion that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Do I have a mover for that motion, please? That motion is also lost. Now we need for you to determine whether Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. Councillors, you've indicated that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. Can you please provide a reason? Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason being that the nature of the conflict is not a conflict of interest, as discussions on a matter that aren't related to the report do not amount to a conflict of interest.
Councillors, could you please raise your hand if you believe Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest? That's unanimous, thank you. I'm sorry I failed to provide a mover and a seconder. May I please have a mover that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest? That's moved by Deputy Mayor Raven, seconded by Councillor Lane. And once again, all those in favour? Hands up, please. Thank you, that's carried. Right. Where's the manager? Thank you, Nick. I'll now refer to our manager, Nick Maguire, to enter into the discussions. Please, I note that item 4.1, while being a public report, does have some confidential attachments, and if councillors wish to close the meeting to discuss these attachments, then please let me know. But in the first instance, I'll allow Nick to present his report. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. The purpose of this report this morning is to seek your endorsement for the proposed future direction of the facility at 22 Wilbur Street, Logan Central, which is next door to the Logan Central Library. The recommendation is that it become a community hub with a focus on youth and also our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. The report provides a wide range of different background and also context in relation to this particular project, which has been provided to try to give you the complete picture of everything that has happened over the years with that particular site. But I just want to touch on quickly a couple of the key points. So the site has largely been vacant since 2014, and we received direction from council previously to look into the site as a creative, cultural and community hub, which was at the time also known as Creative HQ. The concept plan for this facility was endorsed by council back in March 2019, and subsequent to that we put forward a service enhancement through the budget process at the time to get some funding to progress the detailed design for this facility, and that was approved. Concurrently, while this was going on, there was also a lot of work happening in relation to the redevelopment of the Kingston Butter Factory, and I believe you're having a conversation about that later this morning, potentially. But the work at the time for the Kingston Butter Factory was looking at it as being redeveloped as an innovation hub. But then last year it was determined that the Kingston Butter Factory would work better as a cultural precinct, which in turn meant that we needed to do some additional work around the Creative, Cultural and Community Hub, or 22 Wilbur Street, because a lot of the uses that were anticipated for Wilbur Street are now being transferred over to what is proposed for the Kingston Butter Factory. So this meant that we needed to have a look at, what would be the best options for Wilbur Street, and to do that, we reviewed a wide range of different strategies and policies that are already in existence to determine what would be the most appropriate use and what was the most needed by the community. And that is essentially how we came out with the community hub focused on youth, and also with a focus around our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. So this report provides, as I mentioned, a wide range of information about this particular project, including some estimated capital costs, including some thoughts around proposed operational models and things like that. But if you endorse these recommendations today, you're not endorsing any additional costs, any of those capital costs or the operational model. Effectively, the recommendation this morning is just seeking your endorsement for that future direction, so that we can use the funds that we've got to progress to detailed design, which would in turn allow us to get that project to that kind of shovel-ready status. Happy to take any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Nick, have we got any questions for the Community Services Manager? Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, not so much a question, but more of an acknowledgement that Community Services has done some great work on this proposal. If you look at the library each day, you see students milling around it. You see a place where they need to go. We have the PCYC sitting right next to council, but that will soon be moved to Cronulla Park. This represents a great opportunity for the adolescents in Divisions 2, 3, 6 and 5 to have a meeting space and to have it as an opportunity for it to be a council-run one. I think the potential is there that we can actually access a range of services and funding opportunities, and I genuinely thank Community Services Branch for looking after the youth in our area. It's great.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a couple of, just getting a bit more of a background on the space itself, if I could, please. How old is the property? What sort of amenities and facilities does it currently have inside? Just to get a picture of. Obviously, there's a redevelopment, looking at redevelopment. What's currently there at the moment, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the facility currently has some temporary tenants in it, which are they're the previous tenants of Kingston Butter Factory, and they've got a temporary approval to be based there until December 2020. And the names of each of those particular community organisations escapes me, but it's the Arts and Crafts Co-op and the Heritage Museum that were based at the Kingston Butter Factory. The actual age of the building, I'd have to check on that one for you, but as I mentioned, it's been vacant since about 2014.
Okay, thank you. And just in relation to the intended cohort of users and visitors to be engaged to assist in designing the space as part of the co-design process, could you please elaborate on how the consultant will engage the intended cohort of users and visitors to be part of the process, please?
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair. So we will work with that. We'll engage a consultant that can assist in a co-design process that helps to ensure that whatever it is, whatever the future facility looks like, and the design and the operational model and things like that is designed in conjunction with the community. So we'll be asking the community engagement specialists to engage in a range of different activities, from face-to-face engagement, online engagement, surveys, whatever is the most appropriate way for us to help to ensure that it is designed in a very much a unified and co-designed kind of model. That answers your question, Councillor Stemp?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick, when the Community Services Branch selected the target cohort of youth and ATSI individuals, is that based on a new set of community engagement that you did to determine the need for that, or did you use pre-existing data?
Through you, Madam Chair, we used pre-existing data, but fairly recent pre-existing data. So we used the engagement that we'd done through the development of the community infrastructure strategy. We used the Logan Central Master Plan, I think the Arts, Culture and Heritage strategy. So there's a range of different strategies. We thought at the time that we didn't want to engage another consultant to do further engagement because we felt like we had enough information about what the need was in the community based on the work that we'd already done.
That's fantastic, thank you. And just to be clear, I'm very supportive of it. I just wanted to make sure we'd done our due diligence in identifying that target cohort, because I know in the electorates that Councillor Lane identified, those are also areas of need in Division 5, and I'm sure in Division 6 and 3 as well. The other question I had has left me as I waffled on for too long, and happy for the record to reflect that. It is in relation to... No, it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Happens to the best of us from time to time. Do we have any other questions from any councillors? Councillor Hall.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Has there been any expressions of interest from other organisations in regards to utilising this space?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd have to go back and confirm that, but there hasn't been any specific expressions of interest that I'm aware of for that specific space. We have a long list of community organisations that are regularly asking for additional space throughout the whole of the city. So we do have a list of different organisations that are regularly looking for space, but no specific expressions of interest that I've dealt with relating to that space.
Thank you. And have any of those organisations that you identified similarly cater for what you're wanting to do?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Hall, I'd have to go back and check what some of those other organisations are, but one of the things that we're looking at with this particular space, which is conversation for another day once we proceed to that sort of stage, is actually looking at the possibility of operating this facility ourselves through council. One of the things, when you lease out a particular space, then the organisation that leases that space delivers activities that are based around how they can access funding. One of the ideas that we have, which will completely be up for a council decision, is looking at if we can operate it ourselves in the same way that we operate libraries and art galleries and things like that, then we can make sure that the needs that we are aware of in the community are being delivered through that kind of approach. So that's something that will come back to council with a far lot more detail at some stage in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. If there's no further questions... Councillor Raven, I forgot, wanted a second turn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I remembered. What is going to happen to the current tenants, the Heritage Museum and the Arts Co-op?
Through you, Madam Chair, I might throw to the Director on that one because I think it relates specific to KBF.
Through the Chair, Councillor Raven, the existing tenants are allowed in the space up until the end of the year. We are bringing a presentation about KBF either after this committee or at some stage really soon, so we'll be able to talk in more detail to that. In a nutshell, the Heritage Museum have had an offer from the Queensland Government to curate their exhibition, because it is quite a large exhibition, and then move them back into the Heritage Centre that will be built at KBF. The Arts Co-op, because it's a commercial, even though they don't earn a lot of money, they are deemed commercial by our lawyers, so they will have to go into an expression of interest, which council will support them in providing the expression of interest, noting that through COVID they're both shut down at the moment because it is an older demographic that attends those sites as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, just to close out the debate, I might go to the Divisional Councillor, Councillor Lane, for closing thoughts.
Thanks very much through you, Madam Chair. So we've had this building. Originally it was a SAPRE, then it was used as returning offices for both ECQ, the AEC. It's gone through the museum and the craft co-op. We've had multiple ideas thrown out over the years. Obviously, community services branch are working hard on this. The need for a youth centre or youth drop-in place, particularly around a library, is a smart thing to do. Council can cater this to the hours of need rather than a 9 to 5 prospect. They can actually cater it to the community and look at adjusting the needs of the program as it stands. should we look at an external relationship, leasing that opportunity and running that program, they have to run to a specific set of guidelines which might not necessarily change according to the needs of the community. So I'm really pleased to put my support behind this project, and again just offer my thanks for the thought that I move the report.
Councillor Lane has moved the report. Do I have a seconder? The recommendations are on the board behind me. Councillor Bradley. Could all those in favour please raise their hand? That's unanimous and that's carried. That marks the end of the Community Service Manager's report. Is there any general business for the Community Services Manager? Nick, do you have any general business for us?
No, thanks, Madam Chair. I'm all good.
Thank you. And in the absence of managers being present from community services due to the COVID-19 social distancing restrictions, councillors, do you have any general business for the Director of Community Services while we have Katie here with us? There being no general business, we'll move on. We move to item 6.1. And please note once again that there are confidential attachments associated with this report, councillors. We would now like to call Bridget Rogan. Bridget is the Advocacy Program Leader to come forward for discussions. Before we open any discussions on this item, do councillors have any conflicts of interest that they wish to declare? No conflicts of interest. As mentioned, I notice 6.1, whilst being a public report, has a confidential attachments. Do councillors wish to close the meeting to discuss any of the attachments? That being the case, I'll ask Bridget if she would please present her report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will take the report as read and highlight a few key points. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's support and endorsement for a list of job-creating local government infrastructure projects. These will enable a proactive and coordinated advocacy approach to the state and federal government in response to COVID-related funding opportunities that may arise. I'll also highlight a media release that was released yesterday by the Premier and also the Minister for Local Government, which provided a little bit more information in the context of the report. So we now have the information on hand that there's been 200 million that has been allocated to the Works for Queensland model. It's undisclosed how much of that will flow through to SEQ at this stage, but the LGQ figure is sitting at around 100 million. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Bridget, and I know that our Mayor is very excited about that announcement. He shared that with me this morning. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and not a question, just a comment. Thank you for the report, Bridget. I was thrilled to see yesterday a number of generous commitments from the Palaszczuk Labor government to the City of Logan in upgrading the Mount Lindsay Highway, and a commitment of $20 million to the plumbing trade training centre down in Beenleigh, which will be entirely constructed with the labour of apprentices underneath the supervision of appropriately qualified tradespeople. This sort of thing is what we really want the advocacy program to be targeting and harnessing, so that we can extract the maximum possible benefit for our city out of the election period. And I'm glad to see that they've already opened the batting with some generous funds. Let's see how much of the 200 million we can secure.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Raven. And Councillor Russell, did you have a comment? Councillor Raven has moved the report. Councillor Bradley, did you want to second the report? Councillor Bradley has seconded the report. Could I please have a show of hands for all those who support the recommendations on the screen behind me? That is unanimously supported. Thank you, councillors. Now, do we have any questions for Bridget, our advocacy program leader, before she finishes today? There being no further questions, thank you, Bridget. We appreciate your time. And whilst we're here, we actually have the Director with us for Innovation and City Transformation, Mr. Borg. And do any of the councillors have any questions for the Director while he's present? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Borg. No questions. Doctor, I beg your pardon, Dr. Burke. Well, as far as I can determine, that actually marks the end of our agenda for today. I'd like to thank all the councillors for their support of my very first committee meeting. It's been a pleasure, and we managed to make it through without too many kerfuffles along the way. So I now declare the meeting closed.